It really is a great honor to be here with you today to moderate this plenary session. As you know, this is my second public speaking engagement, and we have a very eminent panel who are joining us today. The conference comes at a pivotal moment in the evaluation of evaluation systems, the evolution of evaluation systems worldwide. The rapid pace of change we have seen in recent years, driven by technological advances, shifting societal priorities, fragility and crisis, and increasing demands for accountability, and equally the rejection of accountability, challenges to rethink traditional evaluation practices. Today we will explore critical questions around the future of evaluation. In a way, a summary of our discussion over the week. But I would like us to just take a moment to think, how can our systems adapt and effectively measure and respond to emerging global challenges? Is it a case of adapting methodologies and approaches, or is it a case of further adopting new technologies? Should evaluations and evaluation systems start to anticipate and adapt to future societal changes? And a big question for all of us as we leave here today, what is our vision for a future world where evaluation is used? So I apologize now to the translators because I'm going to go a little bit off script. I've been thinking a lot about this session and obviously a lot about the conference. This session is about evaluation systems and the future. And it led me to think, what is the future? What future do I want to see? And my future, and maybe your future, is my children. That's my future. And I want my children to have a future that has optimism, that has a better world, so that when they come back to Yanqing, that they won't face the same problems that I'm seeing today, that I saw 20, 30 years ago. Conflict, inequality, upheaval, and a sense of pessimism about our future. Evaluation has an important and essential role in shaping that future and informing that future. So, without further delay, we have a great panel. I'd like to introduce them. We have Mr. Liu Furong, who is the Deputy General Manager of China International Engineering Consulting Company. CIEC is a national high-end think tank and a comprehensive engineering consulting institution. Its primary focus includes strategic research, policy research, consulting, and evaluation methodology studies, as well as the evaluation and demonstration of major engineering projects. The company plays an important role in supporting scientific decision-making for the state and promoting high-quality development of national economy and society of China. Mr. Liu has been dedicated to consulting and evaluating major engineering projects, as well as research on industrial policies for many years, accumulating extensive practical experience in these fields. Thank you, Mr. Liu. Please join us. It is also my great pleasure to introduce Sarah Saeed. Sarah is a career civil servant belonging to the Pakistan Administrative Service, working as a special secretary in the Establishment Division, which is responsible for recruitment and training and performance evaluation. And she didn't mention this in her CV, but having checked on the internet, in May 2020, she made history of becoming one of the youngest people to be promoted to the highest level position in the Pakistan Civil Service. Congratulations, Sarah. We're very happy to have you here today. Sarah holds an MSc in economics from the University of Oxford an MA from the University of Punjab, and during her career she has held diverse portfolios including Special Secretary to the Prime Minister, Special Secretary of Commerce, Director of the Policy for National Vocational and Technical Training Council, Director General of the Benazir Income Support Programme, Director of Civil Service Academy, and Secretary for the Higher Education in Punjab. She has worked for the UK's DEval, now FCDO, as a skills strategy advisor, and is a trainer for Harvard University's course on public policymakers, building capacity for use of research evidence. Thank you, Sarah. Next, we have Dr. Joerg Faust. Dr. Faust is the director of the German Institute of Development Evaluation and professor of political science at the University of Duisburg-Essen. I'm sorry, Joerg, if I got that wrong. Joerg currently chairs the OEC DAC Network on Development Evaluation, DEvalNet, who you all know. His research and evaluation focus on bilateral and multilateral development cooperation, political determinants of economic development, political transformation, and state fragility. He is an expert in quantitative and qualitative methods of empirical social research and evaluation. Joerg has extensive experience in implementing and managing complex research, consultancy, and evaluation projects, and he has written numerous scientific and practice-orientated publications in national and international publication formats. Thank you, Joerg, for joining us. It really is a pleasure to have you here. Next, we have my friend, I hope you don't mind me saying that, Mr. Timothy Lubanga, who is the Commissioner for Monitoring and Evaluation in the Office of the Premier of Uganda. He has been at the forefront of the development, management, and growth of the national monitoring and evaluation system in the country. His work involves, amongst other things, commissioning and coordinating the management of evaluations in the national evaluation system, but also in conducting several policy, program, and project evaluations. As a founding member of Twende Mbele, he has also contributed to the initiation and implementation of several reforms to strengthen national evaluation systems in Twende Mbele. Thank you, Timothy, if you'd like to join us. And last but not least, we have Will Moy, who is the Chief Executive of the Campbell Collaboration, which supports users, funders, and producers of evidence synthesis for public policy. In his previous role, he led a global charitable AI project tackling the harm caused by misinformation. The Campbell Collaboration, as you may know, is a key partner, and Will himself is also an active member of the SDG Synthesis Coalition. Thank you, Will, for joining us today. So, not house rules, but I'm very excited to have this panel. I'm very intimidated as well to be here moderating such an esteemed panel. I encourage you to engage with one another, not just answering my questions, and hopefully we will have time for questions from the audience as we come to the conclusion. I'd like to start by asking Joerg an easy question. So, how can evaluations contribute to addressing global and complex crises, such as climate change, inequality, fragility? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to join this panel on this easy question, to say so. And as you probably expect a very short answer from me, but I have to disappoint you. But on this question, I have to at least give a presentation of 2 or 3 hours. No, seriously speaking, you mention a very crucial issue of this conference, and I guess of the whole NEC endeavor during the last decade or so. So, if we look at the NEC conference series, on the one hand, we see an increasing dynamic of evaluators, evaluation units from across the globe, engaging more and more in collaboration. And this is a very positive dynamic, and it is obviously against increasing multiple crises we face, and you have mentioned some of the most prominent of them. So, if we talk about climate crisis, increasing fragility, and biodiversity crisis, for instance, then these are obviously problems which all of our countries are facing. So, if we look at evaluation and its potential contribution to these, to solving these crises, it is obviously that we have to go back to the basic functions of evaluation. And these, for me at least, are three, namely creating practically relevant knowledge, fostering learning, but also securing the accountability of public policies. Now, through these functions, evaluators should and will contribute to solving national problems. However, what we are talking about here is the international collaboration of evaluation. And I think for the future, we not only will have to focus on strengthening national or regional evaluation systems which are responsive to their particularly cultural, political, social, and economic context, but we also have to search for universal standards and principles which work across regions, which work across countries, which create a common language and a common technical language among evaluators, so they are able to jointly work together on the basis of such universal principles, norms, and standards. What we do see currently, in a certain extent, is that evaluation systems, emerging evaluation systems, respond to diversity, to existing diversity. And actually, this is a good thing, because all of our societies are particular. But there's another side of the coin, in that we need to agree on common standards and principles of evaluation in order to communicate and in order to compare our work, in order to draw common lessons from many evaluations existing in different settings. So basically my main point here is, let's not only work on particular evaluation systems, let's also search for universal standards and principles that guide our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Joerg. It resonates very well with some of the discussions we had around the OECD DAC, but also about adapting those principles for global, regional, and in national contexts. Sarah, could I ask you, how can we make sure that evaluation, given these global challenges, is evaluating the right thing?
Thank you, Richard. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for bringing together the evaluation practitioners, donors, governments, and within government, both the civil servants and the parliamentarians, so that everyone brings their rich perspective to the debate and the questions that are being addressed. I can only share a few insights from my interface with evaluation practices during my career in the civil service. And I think that defining the right evaluation questions remains relevant and is increasingly becoming more and more relevant as evaluation gains strength and is adopted in the national systems. But evaluation could mean different things for different people. We all know the slogan for evaluation, what works, but what works for what is, I think, another thing that, once an evaluator goes out in the field, they can be shocked that different people are expecting different things out of an evaluation. And the process of defining the evaluation question could expose the difference in objectives between different stakeholders. A minister could see value in a process. For example, he might be interested in how a training program is going, how the recipients of a certain training program are receiving their stipends, the more visible part. A civil servant might be interested in the head count of how many are being trained, and if he's a perceptive civil servant, he might be interested in what the employment outcomes are. And again, an industry stakeholder may be interested in the formal sector employment of a training program and gains in productivity. So what evaluation means for different stakeholders might illuminate the question of what the evaluator is expected to do. There are also tensions between short-term and long-term objectives when it comes to evaluation. And I think that addressing the question of actually hitting the nail on its head, asking the right kind of questions for the evaluation practitioners, is to engage with stakeholders and to become part of localizing the evaluation practice. And I think one of the very important stakeholders when it comes to evaluators is to engage with the youth, because the youth are the future. And I think that evaluation can benefit a lot from the perspectives of youth, and to guide the practice of evaluation to bring it more towards finding solutions rather than identifying issues only and leaving them there. As the evaluation policy and practice matures, I think the second most important insight, I think, which can't be overemphasized, is understanding the context. And I think one of the presenters earlier mentioned, I think it was somebody from Canada, who said that they are struggling with engaging national evaluators. In countries like Pakistan, even engaging national evaluators may not help much, because there may be different ethnicities and very stark differences between different regions. In one evaluation that I was engaged with, university graduates from urban areas found that the youth's aspirations in rural areas were markedly different from what the program had assumed. In another skills program, a baseline survey reported that 90% would be interested in accessing a vocational training program, but when a training voucher was launched, only 5% enrolled. And the evaluation discovered that there were multifarious barriers to access, which were social, cultural, and even physical in nature. And as the program progressed, access to training became increasingly important and led the program designers to innovate and to recalibrate the program to introduce elements such as arranging training in clusters, introducing parallel interventions to improve mobility and community mobilization. So understanding the rural context was an important, I think, an insight that I, as a civil servant, was able to glean from the whole process. I think when it comes to evaluation, a good set of key questions acknowledges the political context of policy and program design. Again, in the context of Pakistan, I can share with you the story of Benazir Income Support Program, which is one of the largest cash transfer programs in Pakistan. When it was being designed, there was one of the objections to it. One chief minister of a large province thought that it might lead to dependency syndrome. The evaluation firm, it was an independent evaluation, built this into the program design, the evaluation design, and the right kind of questions were asked. And the report actually included evidence that there was no negative impact of the decision to supply labor by women who were receiving the cash transfer. So I think that a good set of questions and a good evaluation acknowledges the political context and can help to navigate the political waters more effectively.
Thank you, Sarah. Would you like Joerg to come in on this question? How can we make sure evaluation is evaluating the right things? You mentioned criteria, you mentioned a good framework. Are they essential to guide evaluators? Please.
Well, actually, when we built up our institute, the German Institute for Development Evaluation, we tried to put this question at the center, and I want to respond by highlighting a principle which I name embedded autonomy. If you want to identify the right topics for your evaluation program, and if you want to identify the crucial questions for a single evaluation, then you should respond to this principle of embedded autonomy. What does it mean? It simply means that an evaluation unit should be embedded into the policy arena where it works, meaning that evaluators should be connected to stakeholders, to those who implement policies, but also to those who experience the effects of policies. This means embeddedness. So they become aware of the challenges, of the problems of those which create and implement policies, and those obviously who experience these policies. But at the same time, embeddedness is not enough. A core principle of good evaluation is independence. And therefore, evaluators should have a certain autonomy in order not to be captured by the interests of those who implement policies or the interests of those who experience the impact of policies. So there is obviously a certain tension in this principle of embedded autonomy. And evaluators, when defining their working program, need to walk a thin line between not being captured by the interests of those they evaluate, but at the same time being embedded enough so they have a good sense of what are the pressing topics for the evaluation program and what are the crucial questions when they start to design a specific evaluation. So my response to this question is, try to walk the thin line of embedded autonomy, and at the end of the day, you get a fantastic evaluation, which is useful, independent, and credible. Thank you.
Very simple answer. especially in the policy arena and working in government, how do you walk that line between, because I guess you are part of the system. So if you say the wrong thing, then the system can come back at you.
Well, I think it is crucial that in the policy and in the political arena there is acceptance for independent evaluation. And this acceptance for independent evaluation is normally shown and defined by firewalls which secure the independence of evaluators, which make sure that evaluators and evaluation units are able to walk that thin line. And I think these firewalls for independently assessing policies, for being capable of asking the right questions, and also for speaking truth to power. These institutional firewalls are necessary to be built for a functional evaluation system.
Thank you, Joerg. I mean, that leads us very nicely, that idea, that concept of embedded autonomy, where we are working with policymakers, or at least understanding the needs of policymakers, but also keeping a hand and an understanding of the needs of stakeholders, leads us into our next question, which goes firstly to Mr. Leon. I mean, should evaluations be designed, therefore, with embedded autonomy, to anticipate and adapt to future societal changes? So not looking at the past, looking forward, rather than reacting to those past conditions or current conditions. And how can we, or how should evaluation systems adapt to the needs and context of a changing world? So again, a very easy question, and I apologize, but really interested to hear from you.
非常高兴啊，能够参加今天下午的交流分享。刚才主持人提的这个话题呢，既是一个基本话题，也是一个非常重要的话题。基本话题呢，因为我们所有的人都需要面向未来。我们这次大会的主题呢，最后一个有 For the Future。这个我理解啊，这个评估和未来包括两层意思。一层呢就是评估 for the future， 就是评估要为未来着眼，还有就是评估系统 in the future， 就是我们未来的评估系统应该是什么样的。我呢是来自中国国际咨询公司，我本人呢从事评估这项工作呢大概有20多年。那么我自身的感觉呢，就是评估有打个比方，评估呢首先是一面镜子，同时是一把尺子，然后呢它是一座桥梁。这座桥梁呢一头连接着政策的制定者，一头连接着利益的相关者，一头连接项目的决策者，一头呢连接着实施者，一头连接当前，一头连接未来。所以关于评估要面向未来呢，我感觉有3个方面的理解。一个呢就是我们作为这个评估者，我们所面对的政策的效果它在未来，所以我们评估也必须面向未来。由于政府的政策规划，他们的制定以及重大项目的建设，这些对象呢，他们都是以改变未来作为目标的。比方说规划，有3年规划，有5年规划，有的呢还有中长期10年 以上的规划。重大项目也一样，有的工程呢长达10几年，重大的战略和倡议也是跨越10年，有的要到20年。经济社会和技术的快速变化和发展，意味着我们的评估系统、我们的评估标准和方法也必须面向未来。如果它不变的话，很可能很快就要过时。为了确保我们评估系统的有效性，所以就需要设计成为能够预测并且适应未来的社会变化。第二个呢，就是我们所有的评估呢，需要面对的对象，他们都会面临未来的风险和挑战，所以我们的评估也需要面向未来，揭示风险和挑战，应对风险和挑战，是评估系统的重要价值所在。我们在评估的过程中，对于中长期的项目和战略呢，也十分关注影响未来20年的多重力量，比方说气候变化、再全球化、技术变革、能源转型、人口结构变化以及城镇化，还有世界经济的变化。我们只有把握好这些趋势性的、规律性的、方向性的规律，才有可能帮助决策者识别潜在的风险和机会，也使人们能够提前做好规划和准备。还有一个想说的呢，就是我们政策呀，还有这个各种项目的受众，他的利益相关者，他们的期望在未来，而且呢，未来世界的改变也会在未来发生，因此我们评估呢，必须要捕捉这些变化，确保最终的我们提出来的评估的建议和我们预测的结果能够满足利益相关者未来的需求。前面呢就是我对于这个for the future 的一个理解。那么还有就是未来的评估系统，我们的愿景就 in the future，我的理解，个人理解就是一个好的评估系统，未来的评估系统应该是一个能够面向未来的评估体系，加上能够面向未来的评估能力。这个体系呢，可以描述成这样的一个体系，它就是能够有效覆盖、有效的全过程覆盖，而且能够发挥独立公正作用，形成一个体系化的互补的合作网络。按照就是我们的经验啊，就是中国的经验，在40多年以前吧，在82年的时候，中国就建立了先评估后决策的这个制度。为了保证政府能够科学决策和民主决策，当然中资公司也是先评估后决策的先行者，应该是从这个1982年开始，这个国家开始实行这个制度，我们就作为独立第三方开展这项工作。上午的交流呢，也听到了我们的嘉宾谈到了非洲的部分国家在推动这个政府治理中，也有推进先评估后决策的这个制度化的一些考虑和安排。我们的感觉就是，未来的评估体系如果要发挥为政府建言献策的作用，一定要让先评估后决策作为一种制度性的安排。国家所涉及到的重大的战略，包括倡议、重大的规划、重大的政策、重大的改革、重大的工程项目的全过程，需要有评估系统的参与。 当然，评估系统的构成呢，既要有政府内设的机构，尤为重要的需要有第三方的机构。第三方机构的重要作用的发挥是能够很好的保证独立性、客观性、公正性，能够为国家的治理发挥更好的作用。关于在能力方面啊，就是评估系统的能力，有个很关键的能力，一个呢是对于未来的预测能力，对于评估提高透明度、揭示问题的能力。评估呢是决策的参考，它本身并没有行政权力，更没有追责问责的这个赋权，但是评估需要这个能够比我们行政系统更好的洞察力，能够预见未来，对复杂问题的透明度也要有更高的揭示力。当然，揭示这些问题并不等于替代政府进行回答相关问题，因为政府面临的情况是复杂的，要远比评估复杂，而且每一个结果呢都是由多种原因造成的，不是单一因素。我们评估呢，只需把其中的主要原因分离出来，用于提高决策的透明度。决策者是在评估的基础上，根据政治、经济、社会和国际环境，他做出相应的决策。当然，我们作为评估人，最好能够为决策人呢提供多种可以解决的方案，而不是唯一方案。当然，做到这一点呢，前面的论坛里边也提到了，要充分发挥社会各界的力量。我们的体会是，确实在评估机构要充分的利用社会力量。中资公司呢，有一个很重要的一个体会和经验呢，就是小核心大外围。评估机构的人是相对比较少，我们呢只有核心人员1500人，总人数呢是5000人，但是我们调动的社会的专家力量达5万多人。通过这样的一种方式呢，我们感觉未来的评估系统，它不仅能够输出我们的股东价值、政府客户价值，最重要的能够输出未来价值。好，主持人。
Thank you. I like the metaphor of being a mirror, a ruler, and a bridge. It speaks somewhat to Joerg's point about engaging both with the policymakers and ensuring the stakeholders are involved. Timothy, this idea of embedding evaluation within the policy sphere, I mean, what challenges have you seen there in Uganda in your past 15, 20 years, but also where do you see evaluation being for policy in Uganda? Is it vision-orientated? How can it be forward-looking?
Thank you very much, Richard. But first, I really want to express my appreciation for honoring me to be part of this panel. I'm really honored. And as an old friend, I also thank you for remaining to have a good personality in the work that you do. I also thank very much the organizers and financiers of the conference for organizing what has been a wonderful and amazing conference. I think we are all enjoying, but also learning a lot. So really, thank you very much. Now, I have 3 points in response to this question. And when I was asked to address this question in the panel, I was really excited. First, as evaluators, we are the ones, as the evaluation fraternity, we have been saying we need evaluations to promote more learning than even accountability. While the objective of learning and accountability are both important, but the stronger objective should be learning. So I think the debate as to whether in designing national evaluation systems, we should look backwards at our experience in the past or forwards. My straight answer is that we should look at both. I think it is important because it's only by looking at the past that we are able to learn and use these lessons to inform the future and to inform the way we design our evaluation systems. And I want to give a very quick example from my country. Last year, we evaluated the National Development Plan. And as you all know, evaluation of a plan, a national strategy of that nature is quite complex. And the evaluation revealed that in designing the previous National Development Plan, we didn't pay critical attention to the issue of coordinating and management of the implementation of the plan itself. So while different elements of the plan are performed differently, some successfully, others moderately successfully, we scored very poorly on the issue of coordination and implementation of the plan. So we are now using that finding and that lesson to pay more attention in developing a stronger coordination and implementation mechanism in the following National Development Plan. So I think it is important to look at both the past and the future. The second point I want to make is that the focus, though, should be futuristic. And some arguments about why the focus should be futuristic have already been advanced. But we need to look at where do you want to take society, and like for us in the national government, where do we want to take our citizens in the future? This morning, there was a panel, a session on knowledge management. And for those of you who attended, there was a wonderful presentation by the panelists to demonstrate this point. For example, there was a presentation from China on how they used evaluation to demonstrate the before and after in infrastructure construction. And there were nice pictorial pictures and videos on how they were able to do this, and how in the evaluation they looked at how much they had spent on expenditure, what was there as value for money, and so on. So I think looking at taking a futuristic approach is important, but we have to do it within the context of giving hope, giving direction, and giving assurance to our citizens with the view of where we want to take the citizens. And finally, the point I want to make on this question is the balance between proactive thinking and reactive approach in system design. Designing systems to anticipate future changes allows for more proactive and forward thinking of policies rather than constantly playing catch-up game. And that is why focused systems can be more flexible and adaptable to rapid societal shifts, potentially reducing the need for frequent changes. However, anticipatory systems may remain relevant for longer periods, potentially saving resources spent on updates. Now, before I address the second part of the question, our systems face many challenges of capacity, challenges of shocks due to changes in government, challenges of demand and responding to the demand for evidence, data quality, and so on. But I think the value we have now is that there is a lot of information on how to respond to these challenges. And I think we challenge ourselves to take advantage of these resources and really be able to help our governments and help the systems we work on address these challenges. On the second part of the question, and I will be quick, on how national evaluation systems can adapt to the needs and context of a changing world. The first point I want to make here is that I think we need, and this has come out since Monday, severally in different sessions as well in this meeting. I think there is a big call for us to match the developments in technology, artificial intelligence, emergencies, and information science in the way we develop and adapt our systems. If we are slower than the progress being made in artificial technology and in information science overall, we will remain or become irrelevant. So we need to match these developments and increasingly, for example, use the capacities that are inbuilt in these technologies to inform the way we do evaluations so that we are able to generate evidence quicker, cheaper, and in a more timely manner. The second point I want to submit is increasingly demand-driven evidence-based policy making is gaining more popularity than supply-driven approach. And the challenge this poses to us is that when the demand for evidence increases, our capacity to respond and meet that demand is also challenged. So what do we do then to make sure we are able not to frustrate that demand, but to actually be able to respond as expected? So the questions and points that have been made around blending context, increasing participation, I don't want to elaborate more. I think everybody almost is speaking about we should increase participation of our citizens, of the society, of the academia, of the media, of the civil society, of the private sector. The private sector, other than providing a pool of evaluators, is really not very hugely involved in this exercise. How do we increase their participation in this process? So these are the thoughts that I wanted to share, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Timothy. I like that point, demand, even if we shift and demand increases, are we actually, as evaluators, able to keep up with that demand? Maybe just back to you, Timothy and Sarah. Is there an appetite within government for evaluation to inform future programming?
Yes, I will start with this. I think there is a big yes. From my experience in my government and also a number of sister countries in Africa, as long as the evidence and the information you are providing to policymakers is connected to their staying in power in future. In other words, if you can demonstrate to government that this evidence is going to help you explain to the citizens that you have a good plan for them in the future, you will have a lot of relevance, but a lot of interest from government. So I think the appetite is there. The challenge for us is to demonstrate that appetite. So if I accompany my minister to cabinet, for example, I need to write this cabinet paper in a strategic way so that I can get the attention of the policymakers to say, okay, you are thinking of designing a school feeding program. How are you going to communicate this, and how is this going to make the citizens like you more? So I think, and that's really where we need to be very, very strategic and very skilled in doing our work.
Thanks, Timothy. Sarah?
Yes, I think there are certain preconditions before we can expect the demand for evaluation to be strong from within the government. As long as failures are accepted and they're not shunned and they're not to be, brushed under the carpet, I think it is there is hope in making evaluation part of the government and embedding it and institutionalizing it. Government failures are, of course, they're not rare. Acknowledging them would require governments to develop a strong memory function, I think, which is still missing. And that memory function should be anchored on a strong evaluation system and its knowledge management. So I think it's very, very important that within the government, failures are also celebrated like all successes are. For the demand side to be strong, currently, unfortunately, evaluations are seen as an add-on. When they face public accounts committees, when civil servants are answerable to the parliament, it's a good to have thing. If they have evidence on whether a certain program or policy worked or not. But I think going further than that, and I think there's a need to go further than that if we want to build a strong demand for evaluation, is that the demand for evaluation should come from the highest level, from the parliament. And this was a very useful session this morning, which spoke about parliamentary scrutiny and how in Sri Lanka and in other countries, parliamentarians were demanding, and they were setting the agenda, demanding evidence and a higher standard of evidence to hold the government accountable for its past decisions. So I think borrowing from Timothy, it's the supply side has been, I think, in focus a lot in the past, but now perhaps it's time to look at the demand side and to generate the demand for evaluation evidence from within the government. From the supply side, after independence and quality, evaluation has to be agile enough, because the politicians, parliamentarians are getting more and more impatient by the day, and therefore the time inconsistency between the decision makers and the evaluators needs to be bridged perhaps through evaluation outputs that have time frames which are fit for purpose. And evaluation from the supply side, it's very important that it has to be in easy language and embodied in knowledge products that are accessible. My vision is, and my hope is, that in my country, evaluation becomes institutionalized in our system, so that our business case documents, the design documents for policies and programs, and the cases for program renewals require a strong component of evaluation before the rollout. And there is within the Treasury Department also a strong realization, as well as budget allocations for evaluations are there to generate the demand for evaluation outputs and evaluation products from within the government.
Thank you, Sarah. And Timothy. Will, you have quite a unique position here. Will's not an evaluator, but you've been highly involved in fact-checking, and the Campbell Coalition is dealing with knowledge synthesis and looking at all of the work that has been done in the past. Do you see our profession, your profession, as looking forward as much as it is looking back?
Oh gosh, I wasn't warned that I was going to be asked that. Firstly, thank you. It is an honor to be on this panel and to be at this wonderful event. And a huge thanks to our Chinese hosts. This has been a great experience. I think that there is, in every different evidence community and profession, this conversation going on. And that we have a trade-off. I think there are evidence communities that routinely churn out the same evidence year after year. Official statistics is a good example. And they have a real value from that because there is a consistency and there is the ability to compare over time. There are evidence communities that act completely reactively to the decisions that are being made by the decision makers they work with. But I think what is really interesting is the evidence communities that try to anticipate the decisions that are going to be made in the next, say, 5 years or 10 years, and understand how to position the evidence that will be needed for those decisions in future. And the difficulty of doing that, of course, is that some of the evidence you generate will be wasted, because you cannot reliably predict what decisions will be being made in 5 years' time, or what those decision makers will be interested in when they are making those decisions. And it's very, I think, difficult, particularly when you work in a government or official organization, to imagine that the best way to use your resources is to use them in a way that a significant proportion will not ultimately create work that will be used by decision makers. But I also think that given that it takes time to generate high quality evidence, there is a need to take some risks in thinking about what future decisions will be made and thinking about how to position evidence for that. So in the UK, where I've done most of my work, a few years ago, we ran an exercise jointly between the organization I led, the House of Commons Library, which is the Parliamentary Research Service, the Economic and Social Research Council, which is the public funder of social science, and the UK Statistics Authority, which is responsible for official statistics. We called it the need to know process. And we asked people, we gathered experts in 12 different topic areas, from housing to transport to the economy. And we asked them to think about what decisions the country would make over the next 5 years, and to answer 3 questions. Do we have the data we need? Do we have the analysis we need? And is it being communicated effectively? And it was a fascinating and I think important exercise. And it was particularly important because it was being done jointly between several different evidence communities working together and bringing different perspectives on that. And I think that kind of forward-looking approach can be very powerful.
Thank you, Will. When you say communication to who? To policymakers? To the people who are affected by the policy?
Very much both. A lot of my career has been in communicating in both directions. So the organization I ran at its peak had 20 million users from the public. That's roughly 1 in 3 adults in our country during the pandemic, providing fact-checking information, reliable information about what was going on. At the same time, we were working with the Prime Minister's office, the Ministry of Health, the major internet companies and so on, to reduce the harm from misinformation about the pandemic and other topics. And I think having both perspectives is vital. In every country, government decision-making is influenced not just by internal information, but, as colleagues on the panel were saying, by civil society, by private sector, and by other partners. And being able to communicate both to the decision makers and also to the ring of audiences around them who affect their decision making, I think is vital.
A point maybe we can consider in our last question, in that is there an appetite not only for forward-looking but also for failure in evaluations and evaluating a number of things, accepting that some, like many evaluations, just go on the shelf. Timothy had raised a good point about the opportunities, and we've talked, I missed the session, unfortunately, on AI, but I caught Marco talking about the ethical challenges of AI. Where do you see technology and innovation? I mean, really, if you think where we were 2 years ago, we were in Turin, nobody had heard of ChatGPT, nobody was using AI, or at least they didn't realize they were using AI. Yet within 2 years, I have to say, many of you have received emails from me that I have generated through ChatGPT, and I'm happy to own up to that. So where do you see technology? How can that help us? It's easy to say technology can accelerate and can make quicker, but that's not always the case, because we could have said that 20 years ago when the internet was being rolled out.
Yeah, it's certainly very much down to our choices whether technology will promote a more equitable world or just reinforce existing power structures. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my previous experience in AI work in another evidence field, and then offer 5 rules of thumb that you might find useful in thinking about AI in evaluation. I should disclaim that I'm very sorry I missed the session that Richard just referred to. At full fact, the 2 best, in my opinion, the 2 best fact-checking organizations in the world are Africa Check, who work in Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, and South Africa, and Chequeado, who work in Argentina. And both of them lead networks in Africa and Latin America, respectively, of fact-checkers. At full fact, the organization I led, we worked with Africa Check and Chequeado to put together artificial intelligence for fact-checking and for tackling misinformation online. Together, we entered the Google Global AI for Social Good Impact Challenge, which had more than 2,000 entrants from more than 100 countries around the world, and we were one of 20 winners. We produced technology that is now used on 5 continents and in many languages to protect elections, to protect people's health from misinformation online. Underlying that technology is a model called BERT, released by Facebook, or Meta as it's now known. And it was a remarkable moment when BERT was released, because we discovered very quickly that tools that we had trained with only English language content could be applied in other languages with very little loss of accuracy. And BERT supports 150 different languages. And that is why the tools that we built are able to be used globally. So being able to be used globally was one of the primary commitments we made at the beginning of the project, that we would think global, that we would build global teams, and that we would build work that was useful around the world. So I want to suggest these 5 rules of thumb as you think about the role of AI in evaluation. The first is that probably it will make less of a difference in the next 2 years than most of us think, and probably it will make more of a difference in the next 10 years than most of us think. We're accustomed to thinking of change as sudden, but actually it takes time. The second is that the 3 ingredients of successful AI projects are domain expertise, in this case evaluation expertise, technology expertise, and data. And you need all 3 of those to do AI work effectively, which is why every time a technologist comes to you saying, we can build some software that will solve all your problems, you can fairly confidently believe that they will not be able to do that unless they are working with experts in evaluation as well. One example of the power of that combination is that the Chief Technology Officer of Google asked us to present the work we were doing to his office because the work was backed by Google. Google had won this competition. So the team went off to present that work. And at the end of it, the Chief Technology Officer of Google said, you are doing things with this technology that we are not doing, that we have not got to yet. And that, of course, is not because Google couldn't do that technologically. It's because we were experts in the field we were working in, and we were using the right data and the right expertise and the right technology together, even though the problem we were solving is actually of huge commercial interest to Google. So the third thing is that AI, by and large, is good at small, well-defined tasks, and it is bad at large, broad tasks. If somebody says that you can create AI to do evaluation, they are probably overselling the opportunity. When we got AI making a real difference in fact-checking, it was because we broke down the task into smaller tasks that were manageable by technology. So to give you one example, we built a model which could identify whether or not a sentence contains a factual claim, which sounds like a very simple thing. But even in a news program that is explicitly about politics in the UK, fewer than 30% of sentences contain any factual claims. So if you are a fact checker, you can throw away 70% of what you might otherwise have to look at, and that reduces your workload by a huge amount. So the way we used AI effectively was by finding tasks like that where AI could make a difference and reduce the workload on our expert humans. Which brings me to my fourth rule of thumb. Anything involving high quality information necessarily involves humans. What AI specialists call this is humans in the loop. There is very little chance in the near future of AI getting rid of the need for expert human judgment about complex evidence and the context it exists in. And by and large, it is unlikely to be valuable to invest in technology with that ambition. The goal, I think, is to reduce the amount of time that expert humans spend doing repetitive and low-value tasks so that our experts can use their time in more valuable ways. And then finally, as somebody who has managed technical teams and somebody who is a techie by background, techies want to do tech. If you give them a budget and time, they will build the shiny new thing. And that's what I would do. It's what's fun. The shiny new thing is rarely the thing that will make the most difference to the work that you care about and that your users care about. And actually, very often, the bits of work that make the biggest difference are quite boring. And in particular, going back to that group of three, technology expertise, domain expertise, and data, getting data into open, shared formats, being able to reuse it across your organization and between organizations is not an especially exciting task, but it is by and large the foundation of successful AI work. So those are my 5 rules of thumb. It'll be a smaller difference in 2 years and a bigger difference in 10 years. You need domain experts, technology experts, and data to get AI right. You need to identify small solvable tasks rather than taking on big insoluble tasks. Humans in the loop are necessary, and the newest technology is not necessarily the most powerful difference to the work you are doing. So just to end on this point, mature fields using AI, so we started this work in fact-checking in 2016, coming up to, 8 years ago now. Mature fields using AI have a series of well-defined tasks within the overall process they are responsible for. They have shared data, they have shared technology, and they have shared evaluation of that technology. And I wonder if you can use those criteria to assess how mature AI in this field is and how you might move forward.
Thank you, Will. It's a can of worms. Whenever you talk about AI, we're only a year or so as individuals getting used to the process. I mean, maybe a little show of hands. Who here has knowingly used an AI application in their work? So, wow, that's surprising. That is surprising. And I guess, is it individual choice, or is it an example of a digital divide? People not comfortable, they see it, they read it, but they're not using it. Maybe that's something we can take into the Q&A. We have 15 minutes, and we've covered a lot of ground. I've left a big question for the end. I'd ask you all if you could just maybe take 2 minutes to answer the question, if you wouldn't mind, just so we can take a couple of questions from the audience itself. And that question is another small one. Where do we go from here? What is your vision for a future world where evaluation is used? And what do we need to do to make sure we get evaluations and evidence into the hands of the people who need it? Mr. Leon, would you like to start? Would you like to?
这个 这个问题啊，其实从我的体会，因为我们已经把这个评估呢作为国家治理体系的一个重要组成部分。正如刚才几位同仁讲的，就是我们评估形成的成果，如何能够让决策者和政府使用？我的理解呢，就是首先，所谓的交付啊，首先的话，需求方就是主要的决策者政府，应该做出一个制度性的安排。所谓响应式评估，首先就是要提出问题，要在政府，这是很关键的。所以交付的前提就是政府要有明确的需求，而这个明确的需求最好有制度性的安排。在我们没有制度性安排之前，其实评估呢，它是有的时候是可有可无的。但是当它纳入了国家治理体系之后，它是一个必须的一个环节，这是决定性的。包括我们推而广之，我们称之为国际治理体系，要把更多的国际组织、评估机构、第三方机构的评估成果用于国际事务，那么也是需要有这样的一个制度安排。有了这样的一个保证，成果的交付就不是一个问题。另外再说一句呢，就是关于透明度。所谓透明度呢，就是咨询的结果和咨询这个评估的成果、评估的这个产品，要面向它的使用者。透明度就是能够从纷繁复杂的，不管是数据还是事实当中，迅速的能够让相关方找到他关心的那个点。这个呢，对于我们评估能力来说，也提出了很高的要求。所以就是一句话，要有制度性安排。我们评估界呢，也应该提高我们自己的能力。好，谢谢。
So yes, very much embedding evaluation within the systems rather than bringing them in from it as an external resource. Sarah, would you like to?
I think the future of evaluation is exciting when it comes to the introduction of AI, especially as William just said, that it's about finding the strengths of AI and seeing where human intuition, understanding where human element cannot be replaced, and human intuition has greater value than the analytical value of AI. So these kinds of interesting facets are being introduced to the field of evaluation, which makes it exciting. It might also be that AI reduces the cost of carrying out evaluations and introduces more efficiency into the processes of evaluation. It is also, I think, going to be more and more challenging when we integrate and look at the future challenges, especially those related to climate change and instability and wars. And this actually introduces a lot of layers of complexity in evaluation. So in that ways it is going to be challenging for the evaluation community to see how they could adapt and respond to these complex layers of demand from different stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Joerg, where do you see us in 2, 5, 10 years?
Well, I think there are 3 crucial points for evaluation to become stronger in the future. One is for good, independent and strong evaluation, we need a societies with freedom for research and evaluation. There must be a political and societal context that allows for independent, free research and evaluation. Second, if we look at the MDGs and now at the SDGs, we see that during the course of the realization of MDGs and SDGs, evidence-based policy making became more and more important, but yet not important enough. And we will see in 2 or 3 years upcoming discussions on the post-SDG agenda. There will be somewhere a new agenda. And it's our task to lobby, to strengthen evaluation and evidence-based policy making and strong institutional arrangements, like my Chinese colleague has mentioned, that we build in the future, in the post-SDG agenda, a strong mechanism for evidence-based policy making through evaluation. This will be a crucial task in the upcoming 2 to 3 years. And the third issue which is important is that good evaluations don't end in the shelf. And for that reason, we need to strengthen our monitoring systems for the implementation of recommendations. I know too many good evaluations with so good recommendations which have never been looked at. So, how do we increase the monitoring of recommendations of our evaluations so that management and policymakers have to pay attention into implementing the recommendations they once have accepted? This is a third crucial point. And the final one, which is an issue from my heart, which I have been tried pushing in the DEval net, which is particular for development cooperation. We have to strengthen the principle of mutual accountability in development cooperation, meaning that we have to overcome the donor-driven issue of development evaluation. We have to strengthen our partner orientation in this field. We have to strengthen evaluation capacities within partner countries with whom we cooperate in order to strengthen the effects of evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, as an evaluator, we've all faced that frustration of producing a good piece of work that we think will make some changes, and we're very proud, and we spend time delivering it, and then silence. Timothy.
Yeah. Where do we want to go? I think I have only 2 points to share here. And the first one is that we want to reach a level where evaluation importance is recognized at the high table of the policy discourse. And what I mean here is whether you are participating at the international level, you are representing an international agency, or from government like me, or a professional, at the highest level of decision making in the where you find yourself placed. How do we make evaluation listened to more, valued more? There are several studies that have looked at how much investment institutions put on evaluations. And there are varying figures of 1%, 2%, at most 3% if you are very lucky. How do we increase our influence at that level? And number 2, we apply the principle of leave no one behind in SDGs. I think it is time to borrow this principle and we apply it to evaluations. In planning evaluations, do we involve everybody that we need? In executing evaluations, do we involve everybody that should be? In disseminating and in promoting the use. But let me focus more on the second part of the question. And that is the question of what do we need to do to get evaluation in the hands of the people? I have 3 or 4 points to share here very, very quickly. The first one is we need to intensify localization. And localization is something that is increasingly important. Even in the SDG implementation, we remember how 2-3 years down the road, there was a lot of focus on localization because they remained up there. And evaluation is still high profile in my experience. So we need to intensify localization. This morning, we had a good example from China at the breakfast. There was a launch of the glossary of key terms in evaluation and results-based management for SDGs by the OECD and UNICEF. And this was a good example of localization, and there was explanation of how that is actually being used to promote evaluations in China. Related to that is we need to promote decentralization. Decentralization to the civil society, to the private sector, but more importantly, subnational level of governance. In our case, subnational level of governance, this is still very far-fetched. To ask a local government if they have evaluated their water provision services, that is still far-fetched. But we need to get there. We need to get there, and I think that's what we need to do. Deepening dissemination and use. And finally, we need to increasingly respond to felt needs and expressed needs, whether at the political level, at the level of technocrats, national development processes. We need to respond to felt and also expressed needs. These are my views. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timothy. Will.
Thank you very much. I'm very much the outsider here, but I have sat on similar panels with a number of different evidence communities, with statisticians, with knowledge management experts, with synthesis people, where I now work in the Campbell collaboration, with accountants and more. And what is fascinating to me is that the discussion today could have been had in almost any one of those communities. Every evidence community worries about how to get into the room, how to be valued by decision makers, how to maintain independence in a complicated environment, how to achieve equity and inclusion, how to respond to technology, and so on. I would love to reframe this question as what is the future of evidence and what is the role of the evaluation community alongside other evidence communities in achieving better decisions and better outcomes for people. And I think that would be powerful because there is so much shared challenge and so much potential shared learning. I'll flag 2 quick things. First, in talking to some of the evaluators who inspire me about what the future generation of leaders needs, the things they talk about are not technical skills. They talk about humility. They talk about courage. They talk about the personal qualities that will make a difference in those most important rooms. And I see evidence communities being very good at teaching people the technical skills of their discipline. And I feel all evidence communities could do more to teach the personal skills needed to lead and to influence at the highest levels. And that's, as I say, a shared challenge. I was fascinated to hear the various comments about institutionalization of evaluation. And it put me in mind of the official statistics world, where there are, as many of you may know, the UN fundamental principles of official statistics. And in many countries around the world, those have been put into law, and there are independent institutions protecting official statistics. That happened not very long ago in the UK. And that means that an official debating with a government minister has a chain of protection in national law and going out into international conventions. And I wonder if there is an interesting model or bit of learning that could happen from there. But most of all, when I think about the future of evaluation, what excites me is the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition, because I think it embodies some of the best of this. At least already, evaluators and synthesis experts working together and recognizing that we have a shared task to do, and that if we do that, we can make a difference to billions of people's lives, and trying to be at the forefront of thinking about this in an equitable way and delivering this in a way that is respectful of different contexts and at the forefront of technology and methods and processes. I think it's an enormously impressive initiative that has come from this community. I'm proud to be part of it, and I look forward to working more with all of you as that and all of these plans I've heard about today develop.
Thank you, Will. So we are eating into coffee and cake time, but I do feel I could take, we started late because you were late, so I'm sorry, right? You have nobody to blame but yourself. Can we take maybe 2 questions for the panel? I see Rada here, and I see Camille over here, and let's Camilla Spence. And it's not because I know those 2 people. It was just because they were up first. Rada.
Thank you so much for the very valuable insights. So I think AI is a great tool, and it could be very much used for evaluation and even for preparing methodologies or thinking about something that was tried somewhere and we want to try it in another place. But the most difficult thing is access to data. So any good data, like in scientific papers, is not accessible. So it remains the general data that is accessible. And I think access to evaluation, also if institutions just put their evaluations and AI can access these evaluations, we will be able to use not only the decision makers, also the people. Anyone can use these evaluations, even people, scientific people, if they want to do any paper, they can also use AI. So I think AI is an excellent tool for evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rada.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Camille Spencer from Trinidad and Tobago. So in light of the theme evaluation systems and the future, I have a simple question, a practical question. From a small island developing state, what are 3 practical steps that I can use to develop an agile M&E system that is flexible, responsive, and ready for the future? 3 practical steps. And when I leave this conference and I go back home, I can start putting things in motion. Thank you.
So, again, an easy question, 3 takeaways. So if you were Camille, what would you do? You can give us 1, or you can give us 2. Anybody would like to? Or I'll take my schoolmaster hat on and I'll choose one of you. Oh, go ahead.
I'll do a very quick answer because I have the least to risk from seeming stupid in this room. My top one, make your next training session be about communications and not technical skills. My second one would be meet your peers in other evidence disciplines in your area. I once worked, by the way, with the official statistician of NUE, population 1,200. So I recognize that in some countries there's a lot of people wearing multiple hats. My third one would be look up something called spin selling, which is a technique for getting senior decision makers to talk about their problems and their needs so you can understand how to meet those needs.
Thank you, Will. Joerg?
Maybe in a similar direction, if you want to set up a crisp and a well-communicable evaluation system, then have evaluation guidelines which have 1-page summary and are not more than 10 pages long. Define core principles and standards which are easily rememberable, and then in your policy describe the division of labor between the different actors, namely the stakeholders and the evaluators. And But the basic issue is no more than 1 page of executive summary, no more than 10-page overall, because if it's too long, it gets lost.
Mr. Lea, would you have anything to add? Any suggestions?
就是我能不能问一下刚才提问的女士，她是评估机构，还是在什么单位？想问一下。
Yes.
Yes, I'm the program director for the evaluation unit.
就是您提到的简单的步骤，我觉得是这样。如果政府有明确的需求，那么需要到你政府部门去了解它，获取任务。当然，也有可能政府有的时候是没有办法表达他的需求，你可以预判他的需求，并且形成你的评估成果。形成评估成果呢，递交给政府。但是这种方法呢，我相信最终会成功的，但不一定第一次能够成功，因为你的评估成果要能够真正解决他的问题，他后续一定还会再找你。我觉得如果是这3步的话，差不多就是这样的一个路径吧。
1 minute each, because I can see some thirsty people. Go ahead, Sarah.
Since I come from the ministry in Pakistan, which looks at human resource, I think looking at the people's angle may be a good starting point. For your country, maybe you should start by integrating the fragments of evaluation that you find within the local government systems, the provincial systems, the subnational government and the national government, and to try and see whether a community of evaluation experts can be brought together and they can share their experiences. That can be a starting point. And then from the demand side, identifying champions of evaluation. We heard in the morning that Sri Lankan government and Ugandan government parliaments are doing a good job of identifying champions, starting from the highest echelons, their national parliaments, and then moving down to identify who good consumers or commissioners of evidence would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. The last word to you, Timothy.
Thank you. The 3 steps in my view. Number 1, ensure that you have either a legal, policy, or institutional framework within which your system will fall. And from what you are explaining, you are already a director of the evaluation unit, so I think you have this. Number 2 is undertake a diagnosis of the capacities, the existing strengths and weaknesses. That is going to inform the development of your system. And number 3 is to develop the system. And that means obtain the necessary resources. There are many people here with consultancy capabilities. I'm sure they are very interested in your question, and work out a roadmap for developing the system. For me, those are the 3 steps that you would need to undertake to develop the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy, and thank you for the questions. I don't know why, but as we were concluding there, a phrase popped in my mind, which is either appropriate or inappropriate. I hope it's not too inappropriate. Is that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I hope when we meet again next time, we've worked out a way to make the horse drink from the evaluation pool. I hope that metaphor works anyway. And with that, I'll close. Please say thank you to our panelists, and then we can go for coffee. Just a reminder, so we'll have coffee in the usual places, and we will have the closing ceremony in 19, 20 minutes. So please, thank you very much.